Bardzo dziękuję
Yes,
za
I can
zaproszenie. Cieszę
hear
się, że mogę
everything, and
uczestniczyć w
I'm
wydarzeniu.
grateful
Wiem,
for the
że w Ukrainie
invitation.
się
I'm
dzieje
glad
wiele
that
ciekawych
I
rzeczy w
can
obszarze
participate in this
transformacji
event.
cyfrowej.
I know that a
Istnieją
lot
fajne
is
platformy
happening
Smart
in
City,
Ukraine in the
otwartych
field of
danych do
digital
zrozumienia miejskich
transformation. There are
budżetów.
smart city
Powstają też
platforms.
rozwiązania dla
There
takich
are new
otwartych zamówień
solutions for
publicznych, więc fajne rzeczy się
the
dzieją. Też
open
nas odwiedzał
public
Nedim z
procurement. And
przedstawicielami ukraińskich
also we
miast.
had
Więc ja
a
chciałbym opowiedzieć
visit
o takich
from
4
Nedim
rozwiązaniach,
with
które
representatives of
zbudowaliśmy
Ukrainian
dla
cities. Now I
transparentności
would like
życia
to tell
publicznego w
about the
mieście przy
4
wykorzystaniu
solutions that
technologii.
we use for
Będzie to miejski
transparency
kalkulator
of public
podatkowy, miejski cennik,
life.
rejestr
So
wydatków,
the
a
city
także
tax
gdański liczbarz.
calculator, the
Także
tax
ja za chwilę się tutaj przełączę i
register, other
zaprezentuję bardzo
solutions.
krótko te
So I will
rozwiązania.
make a brief
Opowiem, jak
presentation
powstały, dlaczego
of those
powstały,
solutions.
a także
They
jakie
tell you
wnioski z
why
tego dla nas
they
płyną.
emerged
Także już
and
się
what
przełączam
are
na
the
odpowiedni
outcomes
ekran.
for us.
Mam nadzieję, że go widać.
I
Pierwszym
hope you can see
rozwiązaniem, o którym
the
opowiem, jest
screen.
gdański
So
budżet.
the first
Dzięki temu
solution is
mieszkaniec może
the
zrozumieć,
Gdansk
jak
budget,
jego
thanks to
podatki
which
przekładają się
a
na tą
citizen
niewielką
can
kwotę
understand
wynoszącą prawie
how
4... Tak?
their taxes. Yes.
Mr. Krzysztof, please choose the Polish language
Tak, już
in the
wybieram.
interpretation.
A,
Please
przepraszam.
do that for us.
Teraz mam mały problem techniczny, jak tu się przełączyć.
Small technical problem here. How do I switch? Interpretation. I select interpretation.
Can I get some
button.
help, or maybe I should talk English? How would be better?
Так, мови прошу вибрати.
Because I can only choose
Так,
English
внизу на
from...
панелі, будь ласка, там є такий глобус зображений. Вам потрібно обрати польський канал.
Okay, on the globus, please choose Polish
Kiedy
channel.
wybieram globus, jest tylko English.
When I select this globe, I only see English.
No Polish. Okay, maybe so I will follow in English.
Гаразд, добре, давайте тоді англійською.
Okay, so I'm
Дякую.
sharing my screen to tell about the Gdańsk budget project. It's a project to show how your taxes are making this huge budget of 4 billion zlotys in Gdańsk. And these numbers are so high that it's sometimes very hard to understand how your taxes are spent. So there is a calculator when you put your earnings, let's say it's 5,000 zlotys, and you can see that, for example, 40 zloty from your taxes each year is going for road infrastructure and public transport. Another solution I would show you is cennik miejski, so it's a city price list, and it shows how much very detailed things cost in the city. For example, when you would like to change your coal heating for a more ecological one, it's about 7,000 zloty from the city budget. And for the real estate tax you pay every year, it's, for example, 60 zloty for a typical flat in Gdańsk, and so on. But these numbers are very basic, very simple. Let's imagine you have more interest and more insight how a city works. Then you go to Gdańsk w liczbach, Gdańsk in numbers, where there is plenty of very detailed statistics on Gdańsk in a very approachable form. For example, civic activity. Some basic numbers, some very crucial information, and also some details, for example, how many civic society organizations in Gdańsk existed each year since 2011. Of course, you can download the data to get some very detailed information in Excel files, and you can make your own analysis on it. The fourth solution I would show you is rejestr wydatków. It's a register of expenses in the city. So every invoice we pay every day is published on the internet. A great tool for transparency, because every, not to mention small, but also big expenses are shown on this website. Okay, how did we get to this place? Just hold on to stop sharing the screen. Okay, let's move back to 2014, when there was an election in Gdańsk. The election was won by late Mayor Paweł Adamowicz, who during the election found out that we need more transparency. We need to build some solution to show that the local government is open to residents and we can trust each other. He established an open data team to build the solutions I showed you, and they came into life within a year or two. And now it's a very good platform for being more transparent and for the cooperation. Of course, it's not easy to make a cooperation with the local government from the activists' point of view. Sometimes we act very slowly, sometimes we don't respond as fast as you would like us to do that. And I would advise everybody interested in digital transition with this social activist aspect to be patient and to establish and as much possible contact with local administration on the political level and also on this professional official everyday level. Sometimes it takes a lot of time for us to understand what activists would like to get from us, because very often there is a huge group of digital natives in NGOs and so on. And organizations like ours, a very big organization, sometimes it's not digital by default. We need to adjust. And when you start the dialogue, the debate with the City Hall, the change will finally come because politicians see and analyze what people do, what people talk about in the city, and finally they should open. If local administration don't want to be open, you can always make some actions from the bottom. Let's say get some data from the City Hall, data which is maybe not very approachable, which is a scanned PDF, a data with which you can do basically nothing, but you can cleanse the data, transform it, and build your own solutions on open source software. It can be a great tool of building a cooperation with the City Hall, also maybe a tool of building an impact on local administration, and better digital transformation is brought to the city. It's always important to look for allies, to connect different environments, to build multitask teams, for example, programmers, for example, UX experts, for example, lawyers, and so on. And generally to connect very different NGOs, very different environments in the city, because such connected strength is always a very good leverage when talking with the city how to digitally transfer the administration. What next? Okay, our solution I showed you were created a few years ago. Now the world is in a totally different place. It's much more digitally advanced, and I think many things we would do different. If you're just considering building such solution for your city or your region administration, think a lot about live data. Try to get as much access to live data from city IT system as it's possible. Think about connecting private, public, and scientific data. For example, we've been starting such a project with Gdańsk Technical University, which is based on a system of sensors that our technical university is buying for their purposes. But we agreed to get all the live data, and put this data on our city open data platform. So it's a great kind of cooperation because the private company is delivering solutions, the scientific community is using these solutions, and we transform data for residents to be available. It's a project on climate change, so if you would like to get more information, just feel free to contact me later. Data need context. So just pure data, Excel, CVS, JSON is not enough because a very narrow group of experts can understand the data. You need to build visualizations, you need to build context and build stories on this data. It's a challenge we are facing right now. We don't have great solution for building stories on data right now, but we would like to develop such a solution in the near future. So on raw data, build a great story that as much people as possible can understand. Also, digital inclusion here is critical. So to include people with disabilities, to include people who can have some difficulties with digital exclusion. Okay, I think every community should cooperate, local government, scientific communication, and NGOs. And on this, you can build a great digital transformation, something what has started in our countries, and I believe can further very well. So if you have any question, feel free to ask me here or maybe later on Facebook or email. I'm available for your questions. Thank you.
Дякую, Кшиштофе. Власне, в мене вже є питання. Я знаю, що в нас у чаті так само, так?
Thank you. I have a question and probably on the chat. Please make a clarification. You say, today we speak of involvement of civil society towards digital transformation. I know that in Poland there is well-developed movement of Srednictwo, public control organizations, civic oversight. My question is how actively watchdog organizations are using data provided by the city. For example, data about expenditures.
I wish such organization would use our data more and more intense, but it's also the barrier I mentioned before, that raw data is still a challenge because you need very particular skills to make a meaningful analysis with such a data. So organization basically use our process, the data. So for example, all these visualizations we show on our websites, which is of course also okay, because this is why these visualizations are for, to help people. But I truly believe that when you use raw data and connect data from, let's say, our administration, other cities' administrations, and also, let's say, central government, and you also connect it with private data, you can build a great tools for transparency. Just imagine, for example, air pollution sensors. There is a lot of private air pollution sensors in Poland. You have API for this data. If you could connect such data with public data, you could make great analysis and visualization for the public.
Дякую. І так само у нас ще є питання з чату. Цікавляться...
There is a question from the chat. The question is, how much money from the state budget annually is spent to implement policy of open data? If you have such information.
I can tell you, because we go from a project to a project. So let's say we would like to make our transport data more transparent. We make an IT analysis, how much would it cost from the system, and then we are looking for opportunities in our budget. Let's say the current project, we are working on an API on public parking spaces in the city, which costs us about 80,000 zloty, which is about, I think, approximately 15,000 euro. And of course, there is also a web server to store this data, which is also about 15,000 zloty per year to keep. I believe it could be also cheaper if you go totally open source, if you go totally in-house, because we have a company to support us with SLA and other IT stuff. So it's the level of costs we are talking about. Thank you.
Дякую. Та показують інші панелісти, що класна відповідь на запитання. Дуже дякую. І, можливо, останнє просто, та дуже коротко.
Good answer to the question, and the last one very briefly. It's obvious that data is not just for the sake of showing that everyone is transparent, everybody is encouraged. And also a question of how the local community appreciates visualizations. How does it appreciate that City Hall wants to be as transparent as possible towards its residents? in various initiatives. Did you have any research? There is a target audience, whether they are happy in that policy that is held by the city.
Understand you asked about is it difficult to get data from the city hall, from the inside? Is it supported by the city council? Do I understand it correctly?
Питання було в тому, чи цінує громада міста, власне, отакий
Whether the community appreciates this progress of Gdańsk's city hall towards greater involvement. Are citizens happy about it? About greater involvement, about the policy of open data, are citizens happy about it? Do they appreciate is rating is going up, for example? Is there any survey whether people are actually using this data?
Mm-hmm. Can I ask the interpreter to just shortly repeat the translation?
The question is if the citizens really appreciate these efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Residents of the city.
Residents.
Yeah, residents
Mm-hmm.
of the city. Yes, residents. They are residents of Gdańsk. Are they happy? Do they appreciate that the government becomes more open, that there is more data available? Mm-hmm. Are they using this data? So maybe they appreciate the government. Maybe the rating is growing of the government.
Thank you. I understand now. I think these solutions became a foundation of city transparency, and we see that when we had some technical problems, which always occur with every IT solution. Let's say the rejestr wydatków, register of expenses, is down for 2 or 3 hours. We got calls from the city media. What's going on? Why cannot we check city expenses? So as I see on Facebook, as I see on local media, these data are used on everyday basis. Of course, in the means of traffic volume, these are not very big numbers, because when you add activists, media, and so on, it's, let's say, a group of 500 people in the city, maybe 1,000. But this data is very meaningful because they use this data further to communicate with their communities.